China updated its anti-espionage law, and it's so broad that no foreign business is safe. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Since the beginning of the pandemic, China's zero-COVID policy has kept it isolated from the world. But now, the zero-COVID policy is over and China is starving for foreign money. Which is better than when people were literally starving during its zero-COVID policy. Seems like people are always starving under communism. I guess all those historical examples are just hundreds of coincidences. China has pitched itself to the global elite as investors' best bet in 2023 and claimed that U.S. businesses could face triple benefits in China. Nothing makes business execs more gullible than the promise of money, money, money. And I'm sure China is as safe an investment as NFTs, new Coke, or lead-flavored pacifiers. They're can't misses. More recently, at a government-hosted conference in Beijing, Chinese Vice Premier Xing Shuixiang promised a bunch of foreign executives that China will create an enabling environment for foreign companies so they will invest, stay, and thrive in China. China, what a sweet talker. But its actions are having the exact opposite effect. In fact, its most recent actions are so bad that it might someday make foreign businesses finally wake up and see that doing business in China isn't worth it. Better late than never, I guess. Here's footage of me the first time I warned businesses that investing in China was a bad idea. Last week, Chinese lawmakers approved a wide-ranging expansion of China's 2014 counter-espionage law. Although supplements for the law were released in 2015 and 2021, this was the first time the law itself was ever changed. And boy, was it ever changed. China's counter-espionage law was already broad, countering anything that it deemed to threaten state secrets. But now, it's even broader. Now, it also counters anything it deems to be against the people's interests. And by the people's interests, read the party's interests. This is based on a holistic view of national security that addresses both symptoms and root causes. Holistic? Like the medicine. Oh, so it doesn't work. Got it. According to Legislative Affairs Commission of the National People's Congress Standing Committee member waaaaay, the new version of the counter-espionage law properly expands the scope of targets of espionage. How does it do that? By including documents, data, materials, or items related to national security and interests. It doesn't specify what that means. Given that we're talking about a Marxist-Leninist regime that's obsessed with making everything, even culture, connected to China's security, it's almost impossible to tell what's not related to China's national security and interests. Information that you wouldn't normally think would harm national security could now be considered espionage, at least on paper. This includes some of China's favorite everyday secrets like the origin of COVID, China's real pandemic death toll, or real data on China's economy. Even trying to find information about things like local government budgets or anything related to food security could arguably be crossing the line of China's national security concerns. In other words, it sounds like we need to change the name of this channel to Crossing the Line of China's National Security Concerns with Chris Chappell. The same could be said for things like information about China's energy sources and telecommunications. According to a professor at the University of Tokyo, any organization and anyone can be suspect, and anything can be counted as a threat to national security in the arbitrary application of law. Considering how everything is a threat to them, maybe we should just put the CCP in bubbles. There, now you're safe. Foreign businesses are especially at risk of getting caught in the net. According to the Wall Street Journal, foreign executives say the expanded scope and powers of the legislation threaten to turn everyday interactions into national security offenses. For many businesses, research on local markets, rivals, and business partners is standard practice. If that gets swept up in China's broad definition of espionage, then how are foreign businesses going to function without being branded as espionage agents? When did espionage go from wearing tuxedos, using cool gadgets, and sneaking into places to looking up something on Wikipedia? The Global Times, my favorite Chinese state-run media, says that the law allows the National Security Authority to draw up lists of companies and organizations that are susceptible to foreign infiltration and required listed institutions to adopt security measures to prevent foreign infiltration. Oh, so I guess not all foreign businesses are at risk, just the ones on the list. But given that the list is not exactly public knowledge, all foreign businesses in China have reason to be concerned. I'm not sure if the Chinese Communist Party is aware, but this is not the way to invite foreign investment. This is just going to drive foreigners away. Do they expect foreign businesses to just pump money into China regardless? Well, given how some people are doing just that, I wouldn't be surprised if the CCP really does think that. The revision to China's counter-espionage law goes into effect on July 1st of this year, but that's just a formality. China has already been arbitrarily probing and detaining people in the name of counter-espionage, and foreigners living in China are at the highest risk. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. China has passed revisions to broaden its anti-espionage law, and this is making many foreign businesses nervous. Not only can China arbitrarily search people's electronic equipment and data, but it can also detain people when it feels like it, for mysterious reasons. Which is shocking, that they're passing a law allowing them to do this instead of just doing it for funsies. But who am I kidding? The CCP has been targeting foreign nationals and businesses for years under the old law. The new law is just icing on the cake, and maybe a little bit of retroactive justification for some recent activity. For example, back in March, China detained a senior Japanese executive from the drug maker Astellas just as he was about to board a flight back to Japan. There's barely any explanation for why he was detained. All we know is that Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said the employee was suspected of engaging in espionage activities. According to the Japanese public broadcaster NHK, this makes him the 17th Japanese national to have been detained by Chinese authorities for alleged spying since its counter-espionage law went into effect in 2014. The Japanese government says it will continue to ask China to ensure transparency in its law enforcement and judicial process. But that's just a waste of breath. Since when has China's law enforcement and judicial process ever been transparent? Despite their missing executive, Astellas has ruled out a China exit, noting that the Chinese market was obviously attractive. This is like when your friend dates an obvious psycho, and no matter how many warning signs there are, he stays with her because she's so hot, bro, I'll let her detain me anytime. Many Japanese businesses are reassessing China, with some temporarily halting business trips to China. The definition under this new espionage law is so vague that sending people to China presents a bigger risk than ever before. After all, who knows where the red line is? People could end up committing espionage without even knowing it. China can use the law's vague language as justification to target anybody. Foreign businesses should be worried, especially ones from the U.S. Recently, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen noted that there has been a recent uptick in coercive actions targeting U.S. firms. Also in March, the same month Chinese authorities detained the Japanese Astellas executive, China's top cybersecurity regulator said it was investigating Micron Technology, the U.S.'s largest memory chip maker. According to Asia Financial, the Cyberspace Administration of China said the move is aimed at protecting the security of the supply chain for critical information infrastructure, prevent hidden risks, and safeguard national security. There it is again, national security. Is it just me, or is China trying to justify everything with the same excuse? Hey, who stole my leftover spaghetti? National security. But it gave no other details, including what Micron products it was reviewing. I'm sure China's going to take its time reviewing Micron. It totally won't use this as an opportunity to steal trade secrets. Hey, maybe they'll make a new law saying they're allowed to do that too. You know, for national security. A few days earlier, the authorities also raided and shut down the Beijing office of the due diligence firm Mintz Group. It detained all 5 of its staff members without notice or an explanation. And in late April, Chinese authorities also visited consulting firm Bain & Company in Shanghai. According to the Financial Times, people familiar with the incident said Chinese police had visited Bain's offices on multiple occasions and took away computers and phones, but didn't detain anyone. Though they did question them. What they were questioned about remains unknown. I'm not too surprised that both Mintz and Bain were targeted. Both operate businesses that collect information. And that's the last thing China wants, especially if it exposes officials committing shady practices, which pretty much covers the entire CCP and businesses connected to it. Although I don't know what they're afraid of. Learning the CCP is shady is like learning that Guy Fieri likes hair dye. We already know. This should be a warning to U.S. businesses of what I've already been saying for over the past decade, that doing any sort of business with China is always risky. Thanks to China's recent behavior, some U.S. businesses might just be getting the memo. Michael Hart, president of the Beijing-based American Chamber of Commerce in China, says our business community is spooked. The Chinese government has continuously said it welcomes foreign investment. However, a flurry of recent actions taken against U.S. enterprises in China has sent the opposite message. Irrespective of the government's intention, that's the message being received. What are you talking about? Detaining foreign investors with no warning or explanation is just being hospitable. That's how I greet all my friends at dinner parties. Thanks for coming, Phil. And China definitely wouldn't say one thing and do the other on a regular basis. Upon hearing the news about Bain, Hart said, "Our members are asking, who's next?" My answer? You! China has been waging economic warfare against the U.S. for decades, at least. Even if a U.S. business is lucky enough to avoid arbitrary detainment, confiscation, or questioning, it'll definitely be treated as an enemy of the CCP, an enemy that the CCP can squeeze money, tech, and trade secrets from. China's revision to its counter-espionage law prove it. If China is paranoid that businesses from the U.S. and other countries are doing things to jeopardize its own national security and interests, chances are China's afraid of the very thing it's doing to others. And if you're a business who, after all this, is still interested in working with China, then I've got some lead-flavored pacifiers to sell you. They're probably made in China. But you know what's not made in China? Everything from the China Uncensored merch store. Head over to chinauncensored.tv/merchandise and support this show in style. And buy your very own I Turned a Blind Eye to Ethnic Cleansing in China and All I Got with this slightly cheaper t-shirt. Link is below. China Uncensored would not exist without support from viewers like you. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.